Assalamualaikum dear students, hope you are fine by the grace of Almighty Allah. Welcome to NIVS Home School. I am Sabreena Haque, assistant teacher of science, National English Version School, Day Shift. Dear students, today I am going to take a science class for class 8 student based on chapter 4, and this is the part 2 of the chapter, and the name of the chapter is reproduction in plants. So let us move for today's topic. Dear student, in our previous class we already discussed about asexual reproduction. Now we are going to discuss the sexual reproduction in plants. Fruit grows from flower and seed from fruits. Seed gives rise to the next generation. A flowering plant produces offspring through sexual reproduction, so flower is an important organ of plant. The flower. There are many flowers blooming near your school and house. First, you take some flowers among it, and in the parts of the flowers are, then have you seen total 5 parts in every flower? The parts of the flower are receptacle, calyx, petal, stamen, that androecium, and the carpel, that is the gynoecium. If you get all these parts, then the flower is known as the typical flower or complete flower. Dear students, these things you have to learn. That means if a flower has all the 5 parts, that is known as complete flower. You do not get 1 or 2 parts, then the flower are known as incomplete flower. And most of you know about the hibiscus, that means joba, that is a complete flower. Now come to the flowers picture. This is the different parts of the picture. This part is hold the flower. This is known as receptacle. After receptacle there is the sepal, that also helps the flower to hold the rest part. This middle part is known as carpel, or this is the gynoecium or female reproductive organ, and that is the stamen, that is the male reproductive organ, and this bigger part of the flower which makes the flower beautiful and attractive, that is petal. Now come to the different description of the different parts of the flower. Sepal. In many flowers there in an outermost hole of the sepal known as collectively as calyx, sepal, and are usually green and look like small leaves. Sepal may be segmented or joined, and they enclose and protect the central region of the flower from sunlight, rains, and insects. This is the work of the sepal, function of the sepal. So you have to learn this. And when it is in the budding stage, then if you look the bud of the flower, that is covered with the sepal. Now come to the petal. In the most flowers, the reproductive organ are surrounded by whorl of petals. Petals are known collectively as corolla or the flower. Petal may be joined as in Dhutura, or maybe remain separated as in the hibiscus or China rose or joba. Some flowers have different colored and scented petals. Petals of this type attract insect which comes to collect the nectar, and by doing so transfer pollens from the flowers to flowers. This is the whole of the flower. Now come to stamens. Surrounding the gynoecium is a whole of stamen. Stamen are known as collectively androecium, and these are the male reproductive organ. A stamen consists of stalks, that is filament, and bearing an anther. An anther produces the pollen grains, and each anther is made up of 4 pollen sacs in which pollen grains are formed, and pollen grains contains the male gametes, and that's why this part is too much important. And again I am saying each anther made up with 4 pollen sacs. This is also important for your MCQ, and they takes part in reproduction directly. This is the third hole of the flower. Now come to the carpel. Carpel are situated at the center of the receptacle and are known as collectively as the gynoecium or pistil. The carpel are the female reproductive organs, and each carpel consists of an expanded hollow base called the ovary, and above which a narrow region is called style. That means carpel consists of ovary and style, and ovary after the fertilization turned into fruits. That's why this part is too much important, which ends is pointed, filamented or sculptured region called the stigma. The stigma receive the pollen grains from the same or the another flower during the pollination. And within the ovary are varying number of ovules, and ovule contains the female sex cell like stamen, like they also take part in reproduction directly. Some plants have several separated carpel, but in many flowers there are a number of carpel fused together. Sepals and petals are known as accessory hores, while the stamen and carpel are known as the essential horde of a flower. Now come to inflorescence. You have seen the inflorescence that is made of that is the mode of arrangement of flower of the floral axis is known as inflorescence. This is the definition of inflorescence. And the inflorescence is of two types. For example, first one racemose, and the growth of floral axis is unlimited, and cymose, that is the growth of floral axis is limited. The inflorescence is very important for the pollination. Students, in your class 8 science book we will just discuss the introductory part, and we will learn it elaborately in class 9's biology book. Now come to next lesson, lesson 5 and 6, that is pollination. We already learned about pollination from our class 5 science book, and pollination is also known as pollen transfer. Pollination is the precondition of fruits and seed production. And rub your finger on the stamen or of the endoecium of a flower and observe a kind of yellow or orange color powder must stick to your finger, and that is the pollen grain. This powder are pollen or pollen grains, and pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigmas, and that is the definition of pollination. And pollination is of two types, self pollination and cross pollination. Dear students, look this picture. Self pollination is the transfer of pollen from the anther to stigma in same flower. Look this here, from one flower, same flower, the pollen grains come to the stigmas of that flower, that is the self pollination, and come here again. Here from one in same plant, from one flower to another flower, if the pollination occurs, that's also known as self pollination, and it is observed in mustard, pumpkin, dhutura, etc. Now come to the cross pollination. From one cross pollination is the transfer of pollen from one flower, one plant to the stigmas to the another plant, that means of the same species. From one flower to another flower, if pollen grain of different plants, if pollen grain transfer through any medium, that is known as cross pollination, and that have to be that plants have to be same species. And shimul, papaya shows this type of pollination. Now come to the agent for pollination. In most cases, transfer of pollen occurs through an agent. The carrier that carries pollen up to the stigmas is known as agent for pollination. Wind, water, insect, birds, snails, as well as human act as agent of pollination. You have to learn this agent's name. That means wind, water, insects, birds, snails, and human also act as agent of pollination. Insects and birds fly from flower to flower in search of nectar or in attraction of their brilliant color. During this act, pollen grains get stuck to their body of the carrier, and as insects and birds do this, they transfer pollen from one flower to another unwillingly. to get the help of pollination media, some structural modification are seen in the flower. These modification are known as adaptation, and this adaptation, why the flower go through this adaptation? For attract the media or to get the help of the media, the media or agent. The adaptation are different for various pollination media. The adaptation are as follows. First one, adaptation of insect pollinated flower. Flowers are large, brightly colored and scented petals with nectars, pollen grains, and the stigmas are sticky. Example, China rose, that means hibiscus, pumpkin, mustard. Now come to the adaptation of wind pollinated flower. These flowers do not have scent, nectar or color petal. They are small, stigmas are sticky, branched and sometimes feathery. That's why they can fly away with the help of air, and there are long stalks, for example paddy. Now come to next adaptation of water pollinated flower. Flower are small, lightweight and can float in water. This flower do not have scent. Female flower have long stalks, whereas the male are the short stalks. Matured male flower get detached from the stalk and float in water, and when it come contact to the female flower, that time the pollination occurs. Now adaptation of element pollinated flower. These flowers are moderately large in small, if small they arrange in florence, brightly colored and may have scent or not. Example, kodam, shimul, aram, etc. And come to next lesson, that is fertilization and food formation. Dear students, all the procedure that main aim of the procedure is produce of seed, that means to get the next generation. That's why the fertilization and the fruit formation is very much important. From fruit we get the seed, and the pollination is the precondition of fertilization. Now we are going to the, after pollination we are going to the fertilization. What is fertilization? Fertilization is the fusion of male and female gamete, and through this it produces the fruit. Formation of gamete is production precondition of the fertilization. The sexual union of motile and small male gamete with the comparatively bigger non-motile female gamete is known as fertilization. This is the definition of fertilization. You have to learn this, dear student. There they give the picture how the from the stigma the pollen grains come to the ovary, and here the picture of ovary, ovule, how the pollen grains make fusion with the egg. This is the egg, and this part is synagogue cell, and this is the secondary nucleus, and this part is the endopodial cell. Now come to the next page. Pollen grains are transferred to the stigma by pollination. That stigma produces a sticky fluid which nourish the pollen grains and stimulates each other to burst open and develop a long hollow tubular outgrowth known as pollen tube. This tube pushes it web between cell and of the style and grow towards the ovule, finally reaches the embryo sac. By this time, two male gametes are formed inside the pollen tube, and the apex of the pollen tube rupture, burst, that rupture means burst and open, release male gametes. Ovule contains embryo sac. Female gamete or ovum developed inside the embryo sac. One of the two male gametes discharge from the pollen tube, unite and fertilize the egg. But there is another one also. There was two male gamete. The other male nucleus, that means gamete, unite and fuse with the secondary nucleus. We have already seen there is secondary nucleus, diploid nucleus, and develop the cereal grains. That means to get the fruit, they have to fuse with two male gamete. Now come to formation of fruits. Mango, jackfruit, lychee, banana, grapes, apple, guava, sapeda, etc. are considered as fruit. These fruits may be eaten without cooking. Vegetables like gourd, pumpkin, rib gourd, that means jhinga, potol, etc. that we eat after cooking, that also fruit. In fact, these all are fruits. The process of growing these fruits is started by the transformation of ovaries of gynoecium of flower. The transformation occurs in the ovary after pollination and fertilization. The ovule transfer into seeds, and after fertilization the ovary alone or in combination with other floral parts into the fruits. When only ovary turns into fruit, it is known as true fruits, and example is mango, jackfruit. And when the fruits are developed from different floral parts other than ovary, they are known as false fruit, like apple and delenia, that means chalta, that are false fruit. All true and false fruit divided into three main classes, and their origin and nature are simple fruit, aggregated fruit and multiple fruit. Come to simple fruit. When the ovary of a single carpel is more than one united carpel of a flower developed into fruit, it is known as simple fruit. Example mango. Depending on nature of periclap, that means it is juicy or not, depending on that, the simple fruit are again divided into two groups, that is dry fruits and fleshy fruits. Dry fruits, that fruits having thin and dehiscent periclap when they are ripe, is known as dry fruits, like beans, lady's finger, mustard. And we already said that which are vegetables, which are beans, that all are also fruits. Now fleshy fruits, fruits with thick and succulent periclap are known as fleshy fruits. The periclap is fleshy fruit does not split open when it ripen. Example mango, blackberry, banana, that all are juicy fruit and it is known as fleshy fruits. Now this is the picture of simple fruits. And it is the picture of aggregated fruits. What is aggregated fruits? When the fruits develops from the margin of several ovaries, when many free carpels of a flower is known as aggregated fruit. The number of fruitlets from the corresponds with the number of carpels present in the gynoecium of the flower. A cluster of fruitlets is produced at the time of placed on a single stalk. Example custard apple, that means atafal and champa, Nayantara flower is available most of the house, and if you observe their fruits you can easily find out what is aggregated fruits. And akanda also are aggregated fruits. Now come to multiple fruits. When all the flowers of an influence together from fruits, that is known as multiple fruits. Example is pineapple and jackfruit. When you eat the pineapple and jackfruit, if you observe there is several fruits joined together and make one fruit. That's why it is known as multiple fruits, because when the flowers of an influence together, that means total flower form a fruit from one fruit. That's why it is known as multiple fruits. Dear students, this is your homework number 2. You have to make 5 MCQ from this part of the chapter, and you have to submit on Saturday from 9 AM to 3 PM. Dear students, this is the basic biology, and this chapter you have to, total chapter you have to learn, and total chapter is filled up with various types of information, and I have told this is the introductory part, and next part you will get in class 9. So read the chapter properly and learn all the important topic. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.